You're not crazy for thinking he understood you too quickly. You're not weak for trusting a man who seemed to see you. That rush you felt the first few weeks, the effortless rhythm, the uncanny similarity, the way he finished your sentences, that wasn't fate. It was strategy, a mirror held up, not to reflect love, but to study your reflection until he could wear it himself. Tonight, we'll pull that mirror apart. Every dark manipulator knows the easiest way to own someone intelligent is to reflect them. Because an emotionally intelligent woman doesn't fall for empty charm. She falls for recognition, for the rare feeling of being truly understood. So the mirror begins softly. He likes what you like, hates what you hate, shares the same childhood ache, and somehow has read every book that changed your life. He is not copying. He is matching frequency. Your nervous system interprets this mirroring as safety. Similarity releases oxytocin, the bonding chemical, and your guard drops without ever being asked to. You start calling him your safe space. But safety built on imitation is the most dangerous illusion of all. Psychologists call this narcissistic mirroring. It's the earliest layer of a manipulative bond, a data collection phase wrapped in intimacy. He watches how you speak, what triggers your empathy, where your boundaries tremble. Then he reproduces them back to you, like an actor rehearsing your soul. He notices you value emotional honesty, so he floods you with vulnerability. He tells you secrets too soon, painful stories designed to make you trust faster. You don't know yet that each confession is curated, a calculated wound meant to trigger your caretaker instincts. When you reveal your own pain, he files it under leverage. Imagine this. You tell him about the time you stayed up all night consoling a friend who was falling apart. He smiles, eyes soft, and whispers, "That's exactly who I've been looking for. Someone who feels deeply." It sounds romantic. What he really means is, someone who won't notice when giving becomes draining. Days later, he mirrors your language. You always talk about emotional growth. I love that. He echoes your phrases until your words sound like his. By the second week, you're finishing each other's sentences. By the third, you can't tell where your identity ends and his begins. That blur is the goal. A blurred self is easier to guide. Underneath the chemistry, there's a system. Mirroring hijacks a cognitive shortcut called social reciprocity. Humans are wired to trust those who resemble them. It's an ancient survival code. When the reflection feels flawless, the brain tags it as safe tribe. But in dark psychology, that same reflex becomes a weapon. He doesn't need to convince you he's good. Your brain already did that work. And when reality starts to shift, you'll defend the illusion you helped build, because admitting the mirror was fake means admitting you fell for your own reflection. That's why intelligent women stay the longest. Not from ignorance, but from the humiliation of awakening. Conversations feel magnetic but strangely rehearsed. He agrees with values he never practiced before. His empathy disappears the moment conflict appears. He studies your emotional language but never truly listens. You feel seen but not known. When these patterns surface, your body often notices first. The subtle tension, the fatigue after perfect dates, the unease you can't explain. Listen to that data. Your intuition is the only mirror that doesn't lie. The mirror trap isn't love. It's research disguised as romance. And once he has your blueprint, the reflection fades, and the real game begins. The reward loop. The mirror fades and the real him begins to appear, still gentle, still magnetic, but now distant in flickers. You start chasing the warmth that once came so easily. It's not gone completely. It just arrives at strange intervals. A compliment after 2 days of silence. A sudden burst of affection after a night of cold indifference. You tell yourself he's busy, he's stressed. But what's really happening is the oldest psychological trick in behavioral science: intermittent reinforcement. In lab studies, a pigeon pecks a lever and receives a seed. When the reward is predictable, the pigeon pecks only when hungry. When the reward becomes random, sometimes one seed, sometimes none, it pecks obsessively. Humans respond the same way. Our dopamine system doesn't crave pleasure. It craves uncertainty. That's the loop. He gives affection, praise, attention, then withdraws without warning. You try harder, hoping to earn the next hit. The more random the reward, the deeper the craving. He doesn't have to ask for your effort. The chemistry does it for him. At first, it feels like growth. He says he just needs space and you admire his independence. He cancels plans, then shows up at midnight with flowers saying he missed you. You convince yourself this is what adult relationships look like, messy but passionate. But beneath that passion is programming. Every warm gesture is an anchor dropped after a storm. Every storm makes the anchor feel stronger. You start measuring happiness not by peace, but by the return of chaos. This pattern triggers trauma bonding, a physiological attachment that thrives on relief after tension. Your body floods with cortisol during his withdrawal, then floods with dopamine when he returns. Those chemicals combine into something that feels like love, but functions like addiction. Each reconciliation feels euphoric because it stops pain, not because it builds joy. He may not even realize what he's doing. Some manipulators learned this cycle in childhood. The inconsistent parent, the volatile affection, the need to perform for love. But unconscious cruelty still rewires you. Your nervous system starts equating anxiety with desire. Picture the quiet moment after an argument. You send a long message, honest, vulnerable, maybe desperate, no reply. Hours pass, days. You start to wither under silence, then suddenly a simple text. Hey, miss you. Relief surges through every cell. You exhale, smile, forgive. That single ping of attention rewards all the waiting, training your mind to endure longer next time. You tell yourself, he always comes back. You don't see that coming back is the hook that keeps you from leaving. In psychology, this is variable ratio reinforcement, the same principle that keeps gamblers at slot machines. Not knowing when the jackpot comes makes the losses invisible. Every so often win resets the pain. You begin to associate his unpredictability with excitement. Peace starts to feel like boredom. Stability, like distance. You become the supplier of your own cage, trying, explaining, fixing, waiting, anything to get back to the sweetness that used to be automatic. That is the reward loop's cruel perfection. It makes you complicit. You believe you're choosing him when you're really choosing withdrawal relief. You replay his affection moments like evidence. You rationalize inconsistency as passion. You start lowering boundaries to regain attention. You feel exhausted but can't detach. Every part of you that once read energy so clearly now interprets chaos as chemistry. That's not intuition failing. It's conditioning succeeding. Once you see the pattern, the spell starts to crack. Intermittent love isn't love. It's a neurological slot machine. And when the rewards begin to feel hollow, he changes tactics. He doesn't want your resistance. He wants your guilt. That's when the next move begins. They say the most dangerous kind of manipulation isn't done with threats. It's done with reflections. This game begins when he doesn't act like a stranger. He acts like your reflection. From the very first conversation, he mirrors your tone, your values, your humor, your dreams. If you're gentle, he's calm. If you're ambitious, he's driven. If you talk about healing, he suddenly reveals a trauma story that sounds eerily like yours. Psychologists call this narcissistic mirroring, a tool that tricks the brain into forming instant trust. Because when someone looks and feels just like us, our limbic system releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It whispers, safe, familiar, home. But this is where the mind game begins. He doesn't become you to love you. He becomes you to disarm you. He's studying your emotional map in real time. What you crave, what you fear, what you avoid. And once he's memorized the code, he turns it into a script, one written entirely for control. At first, the connection feels almost divine. You'll think, I've finally met someone who truly gets me. The late-night talks, the uncanny coincidences, the I feel like I've known you forever moments. Every one of them crafted to make your nervous system relax, so your boundaries quietly melt. Then slowly, the mask slips. The man who once shared your empathy now mocks it. The one who matched your calm now provokes chaos. And the things he once loved about you? Suddenly they're too much, too emotional, too intense. What happened? He was never becoming you. He was rehearsing you. And when the role stopped serving his control, he rewrote the script. Psychologists call this the devaluation phase, but emotionally, it feels like grief without death, because you're mourning someone who never existed. You're grieving a reflection that was designed to vanish, and that's the hidden cruelty of the mirror trap. It conditions you to doubt your intuition. You start asking, was I imagining the connection? Did I fall in love too fast? Was it my fault? But it was never your fault. It was a psychological performance, one rooted in empathic mirroring, trauma bonding, and identity fusion. Here's the chilling part. The smarter and more emotionally aware a woman is, the faster the mirror adapts. Because he's not mirroring your weaknesses, he's mirroring your strengths. Your empathy, your insight, your curiosity. He uses them like passwords to access your emotional vault. And once he's inside, he no longer needs the disguise. He's seen everything. Your story, your triggers, your blueprint. Now he rewrites the narrative to make you question yourself instead of him. Tone cue, lower voice, haunting calm. If you ever find yourself asking why someone changed so suddenly, remember, they didn't change. They just stopped performing. The mirror trap ends only when you stop explaining the shift and start seeing the pattern. If the mirror trap makes you trust him, the guilt hook makes you obey him. This is one of the oldest, most effective mind games in dark psychology because it doesn't control your behavior directly. It controls your conscience. It begins innocently. A misunderstanding. A small argument. A moment where you express hurt. Maybe he ignored your message, mocked your feelings, or made a cruel joke. When you bring it up, hoping for understanding, he sighs. He looks disappointed. And suddenly, you feel like the one who's done something wrong. This is emotional inversion, a tactic rooted in gaslighting and projection. It flips the emotional roles so that your pain becomes an inconvenience to him. Your boundaries are reframed as accusations. Your reactions are called overreactions. Soon you find yourself apologizing for simply needing clarity. You start defending your right to feel, and that's exactly the moment he knows he's in control. Because guilt is the quietest leash of all. It doesn't pull, it whispers. And you follow it because it sounds like your own voice. The guilt hook works in layers. First, there's the empathy trap. He plays the wounded soul, misunderstood, exhausted, not good enough for love. You see his pain, and your compassion rushes in to fix it. Every time you call him out, he folds into self-pity. I'm sorry I'm not perfect like you. I guess I can't do anything right. And just like that, you soften. You reassure him. You comfort him for hurting you. That's how the power flips. Next comes the moral high ground game. He'll subtly reframe your emotions as toxic. You'll hear things like, "You're too sensitive. You always assume the worst. You need to stop overanalyzing everything." These are not random phrases. They're psychological triggers designed to erode your confidence in emotional perception. Psychologists call this gaslight-induced self-doubt, a state where you can no longer distinguish whether your pain is justified. And once you reach that point, he no longer needs to silence you, you silence yourself. But the darkest part of the guilt hook is the moral manipulation phase. He makes you believe that emotional self-defense is cruelty, that holding him accountable means hurting his feelings, that walking away means you never cared. It's a trap built for emotionally intelligent women, because you do care. You do reflect, you do question yourself, and he weaponizes those exact traits to keep you trapped in a loop of compassion and guilt. You'll start hearing internal scripts like, maybe I was too harsh. Maybe he didn't mean it like that. Maybe I'm overthinking again. Those maybes are the hooks. Each one sinks deeper into your self-trust. Each one convinces you that peace only returns when you stop speaking your truth. Here's the twisted genius of it. He doesn't need to make you feel guilty for everything. He only needs to make you feel guilty enough to hesitate before you set boundaries, enough to edit your emotions before you express them, enough to forget what safety used to feel like. That hesitation becomes his power. Because now he can hurt you, and you'll rush to explain why you probably deserved it. This is where the trauma bond deepens. Each apology you give reinforces the illusion that you caused the chaos. And your nervous system, desperate for relief, begins to associate his forgiveness with safety. So the next time tension rises, Your body automatically seeks his approval. That's how emotional captivity feels like love. But here's the truth most people never see. The guilt hook doesn't break when he apologizes. It breaks when you stop apologizing for existing. When you finally realize that empathy isn't weakness, and accountability isn't cruelty, that your feelings are data, not drama, and that silence, when used against you, is not peace. It's punishment. Once you see the pattern, guilt loses its poison. You stop defending your emotions. You stop over-explaining your worth. You stop being manageable. And that's when the game ends, not with confrontation, but with quiet clarity. Because when guilt no longer manipulates you, it no longer defines you. Confusion is the favorite weapon of manipulators, because the mind cannot fight what it cannot name. When you are confused, your brain searches for order. And while you're searching, he's already rewriting the story. The confusion loop is a psychological maze. It's designed not to destroy your trust all at once, but to drain it slowly, drip by drip, until you no longer know what's real, what's imagined, and whether your instincts are even trustworthy. It starts small. A lie wrapped in charm. A contradiction disguised as care. One day, he says you're the most important person in his life. The next day, he's distant, cold, unreachable. When you ask what's wrong, he says, nothing. And now, you're the one asking questions that never get answers. That's how the loop begins. This is more than gaslighting. It's cognitive dissonance conditioning. A psychological state where your mind struggles to hold two conflicting realities. The man who once made you feel safe and the man who now makes you feel small. Your nervous system panics because both can't be true. So it starts chasing resolution. It needs closure. It needs the story to make sense. And he knows that. So he feeds you just enough truth to keep you guessing. He admits partial guilt. He shares half apologies. He opens up emotionally right after he's hurt you. And in that moment of vulnerability, your brain connects the dots wrong. You mistake inconsistency for complexity. You start believing that he's just damaged, that he's trying his best. And once you frame his manipulation as struggle, you become the one doing the emotional labor for both of you. That's emotional confusion conditioning, the psychological trick where the victim builds their own prison, brick by brick, out of empathy and unfinished explanations. Psychologists explain that when someone alternates between affection and neglect, it creates what's known as an intermittent reinforcement cycle. It's the same mechanism used in gambling addiction. Your brain starts chasing the next win. The next good day? The next moment he's himself again. And in between those moments, you endure emotional chaos. Because every small return of affection feels like proof that the love is still real. It isn't love. It's neurological manipulation. He's trained your nervous system to associate relief with confusion. So the more uncertain you feel, the more you crave his reassurance. That's the paradox. You run toward the person who creates your anxiety to seek comfort from the anxiety he created. And this is where the confusion loop becomes almost impossible to escape. Because confusion doesn't just cloud judgment, it erases emotional memory. You start forgetting the pattern. You remember how he made you feel safe once, but not how often he's made you cry. You remember the promises, not the patterns. And because the brain clings to hope more than logic, you start living in the waiting room of clarity, where every apology feels like a door and every contradiction feels like a clue. He keeps you there by constantly rewriting the narrative. If you confront him, he says, you're imagining things. If you pull away, he says, you're running from love. If you stay silent, he accuses you of giving up too easily. That's the game. No matter what you do, the confusion continues. The only way to lose is to play. Here's what makes it so destructive. Confusion doesn't just manipulate emotions, it reshapes your identity. You begin to second-guess your intuition. You question your perception of time, truth, and boundaries. And soon, you start asking the question that every manipulated mind eventually asks. Maybe I'm the problem. That single question is how the confusion loop wins. Because once you start doubting your perception, he no longer needs to hide. He can say and do anything, and you'll fill in the blanks for him. Psychologically, this is called self-gaslighting. The victim internalizes the manipulator's voice. You begin correcting yourself before he ever needs to. You apologize before you even know what you did wrong. You rationalize your pain before he ever acknowledges it. At that point, he doesn't need to confuse you anymore. You've learned to confuse yourself. But the truth about confusion is this: it only works in silence. Once you speak your reality out loud, once you name the inconsistencies, the fog starts to lift. When you stop chasing closure and start observing patterns, you realize that closure was never the goal. Control was. Closure implies equality. Two people discussing, understanding, resolving. But control? Control demands chaos. Control thrives in your need to make sense of what never will. So here's the antidote. Stop chasing his explanation. Start listening to your own confusion. Because confusion itself is a language. And if you listen closely, it always tells you one thing: you are being manipulated. When you finally stop decoding his words and start decoding your own reactions, you break the loop. You stop waiting for clarity from someone who profits from your fog. And that's when your peace, the peace you thought he took, returns in silence, not in answers. If confusion breaks your clarity, dependency breaks your independence. This is the mind game that doesn't start with manipulation. It starts with care. He offers help, guidance, protection. He listens. He provides. He makes you feel seen. He studies your needs, not out of love, but out of strategy. Because to control an emotionally intelligent woman, you don't take away her strength. You convince her that her strength only exists because of you. That's the dependency trap, a psychological architecture built to make you forget that you were once capable of standing on your own. At first, he's your rock. He helps you make decisions, solves problems, steps in, just to make life easier. It feels comforting. Someone finally understands your chaos. You start relying on his logic, his perspective, his validation. It feels safe, but slowly that safety becomes a leash. He starts anticipating your needs before you express them. He offers advice you didn't ask for. He criticizes your plans, not to hurt, but to improve them. And you begin to adjust, little by little, until your life revolves around what he thinks, wants, approves of. It's subtle. You don't wake up one day feeling trapped. You wake up one day realizing you haven't made a decision alone in months. This is called learned dependency, a psychological state where the victim's self-efficacy is slowly replaced by the manipulator's guidance. It's not that you become weak, it's that your power is redirected. Your self-trust becomes externalized. Your intuition starts asking for permission. He'll say things like, "I just want to make sure you're safe. I worry about you. I don't think that's a good idea. You know how you get." They sound protective, but underneath that tone lies an unspoken message. You can't trust yourself without me. Dependency is control disguised as love, and the more intelligent, self-aware, or successful a woman is, the more skillfully it's disguised. He won't stop you from achieving. He'll attach himself to every achievement. He'll make your wins feel like his guidance led you there. Psychologists call this covert dominance, a manipulative dynamic where one partner creates emotional reliance by blending care with control. Every dependency he builds strengthens his psychological authority. Emotional dependency. You rely on his comfort to feel calm. Decision dependency. You rely on his opinion to feel confident. Social dependency. You rely on his approval to feel accepted. And once all three connect, he becomes the axis of your emotional world. But here's the sinister part. He'll use your empathy against you. When you begin to notice the imbalance, he'll act fragile. "Why are you pushing me away? After all I've done for you, you don't trust me?" And suddenly, guilt enters the picture. The same guilt from Game 4, but now layered with debt. You owe him peace. You owe him loyalty. You owe him gratitude for being there for you. That's the emotional debt illusion, a trick where affection is treated like currency. He gives, but every gift is a receipt. This is how trauma bonds deepen without conflict. Because dependency doesn't need chaos to survive. It needs comfort. It needs the illusion that you're safe. So safe, you stop questioning who built the walls around you. Your independence becomes a nostalgic idea. You start saying things like, "I don't know what I'd do without him." And you mean it. Because somewhere between love and fear, he's made himself the architect of your stability. But here's what's truly dark about this game. He doesn't want to trap your body. He wants to occupy your mind. He wants you to self-regulate based on his standards. He wants your first instinct in pain to be him. Your first thought in joy to be his reaction. That's not connection. That's conditioning. Psychologists refer to this as narcissistic enmeshment, where emotional boundaries dissolve until your identity is blurred with his expectations. You start editing yourself to avoid disapproval. You stop exploring without reassurance. You shrink your independence so it fits within the frame of his comfort. Over time, dependency rewires your sense of autonomy. You stop making bold choices because he wouldn't like it. You start feeling anxious when you're alone, because solitude now feels like abandonment. And that's how he wins. Not by isolating you physically, but by making you believe that freedom feels wrong. But here's what breaks the spell. Dependency feels like safety until you test it. When you spend time away, when you make small, independent choices, you'll feel withdrawal, anxiety, guilt. That's not love leaving your body. That's control unraveling. Because the body learns what the heart denies, that safety built on fear of losing someone was never safety at all. Freedom begins quietly, the first no you don't explain. The first decision you make without approval. The first time you remember who you were before his voice became your compass. And when you start choosing yourself again, the dependency begins to collapse from within, because his control relies on your self-doubt. And when that self-doubt dies, so does his illusion of power. In the end, the dependency trap isn't about losing someone. It's about remembering that you were whole before they convinced you otherwise. When all the other games lose their edge, when guilt stops working, when confusion fades, when dependency begins to loosen, there's one final move left. He disappears. Not completely. Just enough for you to feel the absence. Just enough for your nervous system to panic. This is the withdrawal game. It's not about distance. It's about power. Silence. That's his weapon now. Not the loud chaos of arguments, not the storm of mixed signals, but silence that feels like punishment. At first, you think he's just busy. Then the hours stretch into days. The texts go unanswered. The energy shifts. Your mind races to fill the silence with meaning. Did I do something wrong? Is he angry? Did I say too much? And that's exactly what he wants. Because while you question yourself, he reclaims the narrative. The withdrawal game activates your attachment system, the primitive part of your brain that associates love with survival. When someone who was once attentive suddenly pulls away, your body interprets it as danger. It floods with cortisol, and your mind scrambles to restore connection at any cost. That's how he reestablishes dominance, without saying a single word. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement withdrawal, a form of emotional conditioning that links his absence to your anxiety. Every time he vanishes, your desperation grows. Every time he returns, your relief deepens. And together, those emotions create a chemical bond stronger than logic, stronger than reason. It's the same mechanism behind addiction. The reward is unpredictable, but the craving becomes constant. This game often begins after conflict. You finally set a boundary. You ask for clarity. You express disappointment, and instead of fighting, he withdraws. Quiet, cold, detached. He knows silence hurts more than shouting, because silence gives your imagination room to torture you. You start replaying every word of the last conversation. You analyze tone, phrasing, timing. You look for meaning in digital nothingness. And while you spiral through self-blame, he stays still, detached, in control. This is called silent punishment conditioning. It teaches your brain to associate honesty with abandonment. So the next time you want to speak your truth, you'll hesitate, because silence has become the consequence. That hesitation is the win he wanted. That silence you fear becomes his leash. And the cruelest part? When he finally reappears, he doesn't apologize. He acts normal, as if the silence never happened. He smiles, texts casually, touches your hand. He makes you feel crazy for even noticing. That's gaslight recovery manipulation. It resets the timeline, erasing your emotional memory of being ignored and replacing it with the illusion of stability. Your body relaxes. Your mind feels relief. And that relief, that flood of oxytocin, becomes proof to you that he still cares. But what really happened is simpler and darker. He starved your nervous system of connection, then gave you a drop of it back, so that your entire being would crave him again. The withdrawal game turns love into withdrawal. It conditions your brain to chase the very person who makes you feel most unsafe. It's not love, it's survival disguised as affection. The most intelligent women, the emotionally mature, empathic, and self-aware, are the ones most at risk. Because silence doesn't just create pain, it creates possibility. You start thinking, maybe he's just overwhelmed. Maybe he needs space. Maybe if I give him time, he'll come back softer. That's how your compassion becomes a cage. He counts on your ability to empathize to keep you trapped inside uncertainty. But make no mistake, his silence is not absence. It's strategy. Every time he pulls away, he studies your reaction. How quickly you text. How long before you apologize. Whether you chase or retreat. He's not disconnected. He's collecting data. And when he finally returns, his timing is surgical. He knows exactly how long to stay gone for your fear to peak. Then he shows up, sweet, charming, casual. He rewires your pain into gratitude, and you welcome him back because the silence hurt more than the lies ever did. That's the real darkness of this game. It makes pain feel like proof of love. Here's the truth most victims discover too late. He never disappears because he's confused. He disappears because it resets your submission. It makes you chase him again. It puts the power back in his hands. Every silent treatment, every "I just need time," is a reset button for his control. But the antidote to this game is not confrontation. It's detachment, because silence only hurts when you're still waiting for an echo. The moment you stop seeking closure, when his silence no longer pulls you into panic, the withdrawal loses its grip. You stop reacting. You stop chasing. You stop measuring your worth by the rhythm of his attention. That's when his silence turns on itself. Because without your reaction, there's no game left to play. Silence then becomes what it was always meant to be. Not punishment, but peace. Hey, take a deep breath. You've just seen behind the curtain. The invisible games that emotionally intelligent women often never realize they're part of. Until it's too late. Because control doesn't always come wrapped in cruelty. Sometimes it comes in the shape of understanding. Of soft words. Of a man who seems to get you, when in truth he's mapping you. Dark psychology isn't about hating men or fearing love. It's about learning the patterns that protect your empathy from being weaponized against you. And it's about reclaiming the quiet power that manipulators fear most: awareness. If you felt seen, understood, or even slightly shaken tonight, that's a good sign. It means your intuition is waking up. Keep listening to that voice inside you. It's the part of you they can never truly control. And if you want to go even deeper into the hidden tactics of emotional control, in my next episode, we'll uncover the subtle manipulation techniques narcissists use during arguments. It's darker, more personal, and it'll change the way you read people forever. Sleep well. And remember, awareness is the real power.